Okay, so what we're going to talk about this morning is mental health in the workplace. Most of you, or a lot of you will know who I am, Graham Edgar. I work for Sentient, which is part of the Romero Group +2 over the years. And I've been involved in HR, advising clients on HR issues for the last 25 years. Before that, I had 17 years in local government and the police service, not as a policeman, I hasten to add. So a lot of experience in dealing with HR issues. I'm not a solicitor, but I've picked up a few things over the years. So mental health in the workplace has become a major issue for employers over the last few years. It's always been a major issue, but it seems to be more and more at the forefront of telephone calls from clients about an employee who has some form of mental health complaint that is causing issues within the workplace. And we've got to learn how to deal with these issues. So what I'm going to try and do is just give you a few little pointers this morning about how we can go about that. So what's to worry about? Anybody in this world that we live in today? Anybody watch the news? Is there any issues that come up on a regular basis that anybody thinks, oh, that's something that perhaps people will worry about? Anything? Anybody want to come off mute and just shout out some of the issues that are going on that might cause concern for our employees or our employees' families or whatever? Any thoughts on that? No? Okie dokie. Well, here's just a few things that perhaps cause people to have some concerns. Yeah, finances issues, that's one. Worrying about job security, health concerns, financial anxiety, as somebody just pointed out, relationship insecurity, parenting concerns, social anxiety, fear of failure, environmental concerns. We're always being told that the world's going to come to an end and burn up if we don't stop driving petrol cars, etc. Anxiety about travel, worrying about the unknown, job interview anxiety, worry just from being a parent, financial instability. So you might be anxious about finances, but you actually might have financial worries that are causing you problems. Examination stress. Your kids might be going through examinations, they're suffering from stress, and that is being manifested in the home as issues that your employees or you have to deal with. A fear about speaking in public or doing webinars, that's a big one for me. And fear of aging, that's an even bigger one for me. Fear of losing loved ones, overthinking past decisions. Did I do the right thing? Worrying about technology, privacy, concerns over world events. We are constantly being bombarded by issues. My personal view is a lot of that is down to the need to fill 24-hour news channels with whatever they can think up next to worry us all about. And apart from reporting the actual news, they like to dig up issues that really, are they a concern? Should we be concerned about them? The sun burning out in 20 billion years is probably not something we need to worry about today. But they like to tell us about it on a regular basis. So there's lots of things that go around that can cause people anxiety, stress, and concerns. And all of this is outside of the workplace. People will worry about their job. Are they coping in their job? Are they able to perform their job? So all of these things become issues that you as HR people or people with responsibility for HR are going to have to deal probably at some point in your role. Stress awareness is a big issue. lots of clients will undertake stress risk assessments. We need to be aware of what the stress issues could be for our employees. And you may or may not be aware that there is a stress awareness month each year in April since 1992 to increase our awareness of issues that cause stress to our employees. So there's lots of information out there on the internet about how we can deal with stress, but it's trying to bring people's or employers' awareness to the issue and how best we can look to deal with these matters. I usually say right at the beginning of these sessions, if you want to jump in and challenge anything I'm saying or ask me a question, then feel free to do that as we go along. I've got no problem with anybody jumping in and asking questions. Or if you prefer to leave it to the end, leave it to the end, or even catch up with me afterwards, and we can talk through any particular issues that you might have. So as well as the Stress Awareness Week in April, we have a Mental Health Awareness Week, which takes place in May each year. So again, this is bringing to the attention of employers or anybody else the issues that employers have to deal with in terms of the mental health that may be issues that may be going on within your company. So we've got April stress awareness, we've got May mental health awareness, and we've also got the first Wednesday in November, which is the National Stress Awareness Day. It's observed annually on the first Wednesday in November, which this year falls on November the 5th. Remember. The day is dedicated to raising awareness about stress, its impact on mental and physical health, and effective management strategies to help us to deal with issues of stress within the workplace. So there's no end of information out there and tools that we can use to identify what stress issues might be, and how we can potentially look to try and help people to get through any problems that they're facing as a result of any stress they're facing. And why do we focus on stress? Well, the law requires employers to tackle work-related stress issues. So, the Health and Safety Executive have got lots of information on managing stress, doing stress awareness audits, risk assessments. So we should all be looking to be taking steps to prevent work-related stress, and that will help to improve the working relationships and atmospheres that you have. So what we're trying to do is to help to make employees healthier and happier at work, to improve performance and make employees more productive. If we've got people who are suffering from stress, it's highly likely that their performance is not up to the levels that we would hope to have, or may have dipped. We're looking to try and reduce absence levels, and particularly today, where we see the news on a regular basis, particularly since the new government came in, on how we can reduce the what's it called? What it's called? The benefits cost to the country, to reduce the amount of benefits that we pay out, including things like sick pay, long-term sickness benefits, or health benefits. So if employers can do more to encourage employees to talk about issues of stress, to help employees to get through any issues that they're dealing with, then that is going to benefit both you as a company in terms of getting better performance out of your employees, but also help to reduce absence levels and keep people away from having to claim benefits. It's also potentially, if we've got people suffering from stress, we may be able to avoid disputes at work. And we want to try and build an organisation that is attractive, that people will want to come and work for. So if people understand that your business deals with issues, well-being issues in the workplace at a good level, then they may be more attracted to come and work for the company. Employees who are stressed might be off work due to stress, or they might come to work but not be able to perform their duties to the normal standards. And there's a big issue about things like presenteeism, which people may have heard of, where people feel that they can't stay off work, they have to turn up and try and continue to do their job because they need to be seen at work. But actually, they would be much better off staying away and getting better, and you working with them to put in strategies in place to help them reduce the stress that they're facing, or identify the stresses and help them to start to avoid them. Because if they come to work and they're still stressed, and they are unlikely to be performing their job at a satisfactory level, which may lead to issues of having to go down performance management routes, disciplinary action, etc. So we need, as employers, to become aware of what might be causing stress to people at work, and how we can perhaps put procedures and actions in place that is going to help people to avoid the issues there. So we're not just talking about stress, we're talking about many other mental health conditions that affect people. And there's a list here of issues, mental health issues that commonly come up in terms of having to deal with problems within the workplace. Depression is a clear and obvious area of absence from work due to depression. And we deal on a regular basis, daily basis, with having to manage staff who are unfit for work because they are suffering from stress, anxiety, or depression. Now, there was a time, as I say, I've been around for many years now. We used to try and, with people who are off sick with anxiety or stress and anxiety, we used to talk to employers about, well, let's get dealing with this before this stress and anxiety turns into depression. Because, way back, stress and anxiety wouldn't be classed particularly as a disability. Depression clinical depression particularly, could be classed as a disability, and therefore employers had to worry more about the Equality Act and making sure that we didn't discriminate against somebody who was suffering from diagnosed depression, which made things a lot more difficult, or potentially more difficult. Anxiety and stress we could deal with, we could try and sort out. If we couldn't sort it out, as long as the medical certificate didn't say somebody was signed off with depression, then we could more easily then go down the route of perhaps parting company with an employee on health grounds due to their inability to attend work. That differentiation between the issues has now closed in, and really we need to be very careful. Anybody who's suffering from anxiety and stress, that can quite easily slip into depression, or could be the cause of depression. So we take a much more careful view of anybody that's suffering with stress or anxiety, and try and help clients to manage people through those particular conditions. Other mental health conditions, less likely that you'll see with these on a regular basis: schizophrenia, bipolar condition, anxiety orders such as phobias, acute stress disorder or PTSD, obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, mixed anxiety and depression, eating disorders. There's lots and lots of mental health conditions that these days that are coming more and more to the front, and this doesn't take into account the massive increase in people suffering with ADHD and other disorders and mental health conditions. That we need to understand and know how best to deal with people. Can you hear me, by the way? I'm sitting here with my headphones on. It's not plugged in. Can you hear me better?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Talk about multitasking, eh? Right. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. So, you know, and the other big thing that's having an effect these days is the whole issue of neurodiversity and neurodivergent conditions that we all have to deal with, and affect a vast number of people. And we need to understand how that works and be aware of mechanisms, steps that maybe we may be able to put in place to help people who are suffering from those conditions. Clearly, we can't deal with all of these issues in a short hour to an hour and a half seminar. And I want to, you know, as you're probably well aware, I am not a doctor, and neither are any of you. And we don't expect you to have a full understanding of psychiatric care of your employees. We can't solve all of the problems that our employees may present to us. What we're trying to do in this session and others is to raise awareness about mental health, how it affects you in the workplace, and what steps we could perhaps take to support colleagues who are facing difficulties. The main issue is, for me, is to start to listen to people to understand what's going on that might be causing any difficulties that are manifesting themselves in the workplace. Start a conversation with somebody about what's happening and try and identify what the difficulties they might be facing are, and how we can point them in the direction of getting help to maintain their position within your organization. Because ultimately what we're trying to do with anybody who's got an illness, we're trying to help them to return to work as soon as possible, and avoid having to, well, first of all, suffer the difficulties of dealing with SSP only. You know, for many employers, it's not possible to provide sickness benefits that are over and above the statutory entitlement, and that is a financial worry for people. For people who are genuinely unwell and have to take time off work, and don't have the lifeline of a company sick pay scheme, you know, they're going to rely on SSP only, which then can, you know, if they're already suffering with mental health issues, the financial worry of having to cope on 100 and odd quid a week is likely to be a difficulty for them. So what we're trying to do, as in any absence due to ill health, is to work with the employee to find out what the issues are, how we can perhaps help them to address those and to return to work, you know, within a reasonable time frame. What we need to understand first of all, I think, is that mental health issues are a normal part of life. 1 in 4 people will experience at least one diagnosable mental health issue every year. The World Health Organization forecasts that by 2030, depression will be the single leading cause of the global burden of disease. So they treat it as a disease. Now, in the past, the major issue for employers in dealing with long-term sickness, particularly difficult to diagnose and to treat, and for employers to accept, was the musculoskeletal problems, backache. You know, my early days in HR were dealing with people who were often long-term sick with a musculoskeletal problem, that nobody could properly diagnose, but the employee couldn't come to work because their back hurt too bad or their leg or whatever it was. Now, a lot of those would be perfectly correct, the genuine medical conditions, but a lot of people were able to jump on that bandwagon. If they didn't want to work, a back problem was a good way of getting out of having to come to work. Well, I'm not saying depression is in that same league, but certainly with the ability to find out what depression is, what the symptoms are, many people can go to their doctors and run off a list of symptoms and get a diagnosis of depression in order to stay away from work. So I accept, that there are people out there, sadly, who will try and milk the situation, who will find a condition that they can put palm off to their employer as a genuine condition, and we've still got to deal with that situation as well as the genuine people that we really would like to help to get through their medical condition and get back into the work situation. And despite the fact that the World Health Organization are talking about depression as being the major cause of disease in the world by the end of this decade, we still have a long-standing stigma around mental health, which means that most of us have a limited understanding of mental health. However, in my view, best employers can see beyond a label or diagnosis to get to the correct way forward. Something went through my mind there that I was going to mention, but hopefully it will come back. I'm mental health first aid trained. I got the qualification a couple of years back. That was a 6-day course at the time to get that. So as I say, and I still don't consider myself to be any kind of expert on mental health issues. But that mental health first aid course was extremely beneficial for me. And I would highly recommend it if your organisation can send people onto this course, then you will get a much better understanding of what the issues might be and strategies that we can put in place to help identify and help people who are suffering from mental health issues. But I've just had a recent update from the MSHFA on numbers, workplace stress and burnout. 25% of US workers report feeling unable to cope with workplace stress, showing the need for more support. 79% of employees are experiencing moderate to high stress levels, with younger employees, 16 to 24, and women showing the highest stress levels. Signs of burnout are becoming more common, with 63% of UK employees now showing symptoms like exhaustion and disengagement, up from 51% 2 years ago. So it is an ongoing issue that does appear to be on the increase. Now, as I say, awareness of the whole area of mental health will be a factor in all of this. For example, I read a report last week or the week before about what causes anxiety in the younger generation, and one of the big factors about for younger people to worry about is driving a car. This report study has shown that young persons of driving age were worried about trying to take a driving test, whether they could do it, the whole idea of driving a car, the worries about the car working, getting them where they wanted to be, putting petrol in the car. So there's a whole list of issues that apparently young people today are struggling to cope with purely on the idea of having to learn to drive. So, I mean, it's just an example of the issues that are constantly being put forward to us. Absenteeism figures by MHFA, 10% of UK adults took time off for mental health reasons over the past year, with almost half of them, these absences, lasting for a month or longer. Work-related mental health issues now cost the UK economy £57.4 billion each year, which has nearly doubled in recent years. So again, we can see why the government is hell-bent on trying to put measures in place that are going to help employers to keep people at work, so they are productive and they're contributing to the economy, but also to keep them away from the benefit system and the burdens of that they're desperately trying to navigate away from. Financial pressure is now the top external stressor, affecting 41% of employees, an increase from 37% last year. 52% of employees that financial worries have negatively affected their workplace performance, while 45% say this disrupts their sleep. Now again, we've seen the inflation figures today at 3.8%, stayed steady for 3 months, but still well above what the government would like them to be at. And this causes worry for our employees. You know, they see their bills going up every month. They don't see their wages rising by the same amount. They don't know how they're going to cope with stuff, and that can all have a negative impact upon people within the workplace that might help you to understand why there are issues going on at work that need to be addressed. Despite all of this and the knowledge about mental health issues today, as I said earlier, stigma and workplace culture is a major issue. Still, 35% of employees say they've experienced discrimination or stigma in the workplace due to poor mental health. 45% feel uncomfortable discussing mental health concerns with their manager, feeling negative repercussions if they do raise the issue. And 47% of employees believe that an open dialogue about mental health would significantly improve their well-being at work. So you've got half the workforce saying, I can't talk to my manager about any of this stuff because they won't understand, or it will affect my my workplace relationships, my ability to progress within the workplace, or even my job might be at risk completely. But equally, 50% of people say that if they did have the ability to talk to somebody, whether it be their line manager or somebody perhaps that's trained in mental health first aid, just to talk through issues, that could be a big help and help them to start to improve within the workplace. So as I say, mental health issues are common. Anxiety and depression, those associated with misuse of drugs and alcohol. Now that may seem, when we're talking about mental health issues, but people who have mental health issues do potentially turn to drugs and alcohol to help them deal and cope with the problems they're having. And I've seen, and colleagues have seen, an increase in reports from clients of worries, concerns about employees using drugs in the workplace. So there's a bigger emphasis on how do employers deal with that situation. And again, it's linking all these things together. Whilst anybody using drugs in the workplace is likely to suffer the consequences of serious disciplinary action, potentially dismissal, in terms of how we deal with a situation like that, when we get to investigating the causes or what's happened, then one of the mitigating factors that might come out from an employee is they've got mental health issues or they've got serious worries about X, Y, and Z. And as employers, we have a duty when investigating matters before we decide on what level of disciplinary action we're going to take, to fully investigate it and to take into account any mitigating factors that might affect our decision at the end of the day. So it is likely that any of your employees will either develop a mental ill health condition or have close contact with someone who does. So it's not just a case of your direct employee who might be having problems. They themselves might be having issues at home. It may be their partner who's got a mental health condition, or who's suffering from stress, anxiety, or whatever other mental health condition they may have. It may be a child. We're all going to come into contact with somebody at some point who has mental health issues. It might be your best friend that you're trying to help through an issue. And that's then having a knock on to how you're performing at work, because you've got these worries externally to the business. And again, whilst your job's your job and your personal life's your personal life, as an employer, when we're looking at taking action against people who might be underperforming, it's identifying why those underperforming, those who are underperforming are doing so, and what the mitigating factors might be, and is there anything that we can do that might help to alleviate the concerns and help them to improve in the workplace. Ultimately, as long as you can be seen to have tried to work with people before making the harsh decision to dismiss somebody and end their employment, we need to think about what other measures might be taken. So I've in the recent past, I've worked with clients who have had to deal with an employee threatening suicide, an employee making strange comments at work, stating he wishes to kill a colleague. And these have been raised as issues. Graham, we've got so and so, they're threatening to commit suicide. What do I do? How do I deal with that? It's not easy. But again, it's identifying what's going on and trying to put a strategy in place that's going to stop this person feeling the way that they do. And we'll come on to more about strategies as we go on. So we all have mental health, just as we have physical health. Mental health, like physical health, can fluctuate on a spectrum from good to poor. Everybody has mental health. It's either good, you're either good, or your mental health is poor. And at some point, depending on what's happening in your life and your environment, your surroundings, you're going to fluctuate up and down between good health and less good health, mental health. So mental health can affect us irrespective of age, personality, or background. There's an advert that comes on the TV that I watched last night, and it's about the BBC providing support to people to children particularly, with mental health issues through Children in Need. And it pictures a young lad walking to school with a big heavy satchel on his back, and he walks past a row of council houses with other council house kids coming out and going to school, which tends to picture the mental health issue that children have as being one that's confined to people who come from a lower socioeconomic background. Now, I'm sure that's not what they intend to do, but it's a picture that people get, and therefore, mental health problems they only affect other people, and particularly people from a lower social background. And it's trying to get away and understanding that mental health issues will affect everybody. It doesn't matter what your nationality, your background, your wealth, whatever it is, people will suffer from mental health problems, and we need to understand that and be aware of it. Mental health problems can appear as a result of experiencing both our personal and working lives, or they can just happen. If one day you wake up and suddenly you don't feel as good as you did, and you don't understand why. So again, it's identifying or helping you to identify that just because somebody's performance at work is not up to the levels that you expect, or something's dropped off, something's changed, It's a question of, well, let's try and identify what that issue might be, and before we look at, the draconian measures, we look at, well, let's try and identify it. Let's try and drill down and see what help we can give as an organisation. Is the employee willing to accept help, so that we can try and move things forward in a helpful manner. Crucial thing to remember is everyone's experience of poor mental health is different. So I worked with an individual who went through a divorce and was off work for, I think she was off for 8 weeks in total, trying to cope with the fact that she was getting divorced. I got divorced. I didn't have a day off work. That may say more about my marriage than her marriage, but yeah, people deal with stress factors and issues in different ways. And again, it's being able to identify that just because somebody is suffering, is not coping with a particular issue in a good way, and you could cope with that, it doesn't mean to say that your way of coping is right and theirs is wrong. It's being aware of what the differences might be, what the issues might be, and how they affect the individual, and what we can do to try and assist in that manner. So 2 people with the same condition may have entirely different symptoms and coping mechanisms. That's why working with people on an individual basis is so important. So we talked about this mental health condition being, varying from good mental health to poor mental health. And that slide talks about the mental health continuum. So you've got on the I can't remember, maths with them, I suppose, was the X and the Y axis. Anyway, the horizontal axis, you've got people with no diagnosis of mental health and people with severe diagnosis of mental health or well-being issues. And and then the vertical measures, people who have maximum mental health, good mental health or well-being, and people who have poor mental health and well-being. And people will sit in one of those 4 areas at different times, at different times of their lives. Somebody might have no diagnosis of a mental health condition, but actually are suffering quite badly in terms of their mental health and well-being. They may not be coping with a particular issue, but they've never had any treatment or diagnosis that they've got any kind of mental health confirmed condition. So people will fit within some part of that spectrum during their lives and during their lives as your employees. Today the approach is to talk about 2 continua on different axes. We could all move around them. The horizontal axis is the best place to fit medical language and the vertical social language. Right, we mentioned stigma and the fact that people suffer still today from worry about how people will perceive any mental health condition that they may have. So whilst things are slowly improving and things like today help us to get across the idea that this is not a simple area and we need to take more care in how we deal with our employees that might be suffering from mental health conditions, stigma is still associated with mental ill health. It involves having negative attitudes about those with mental health, leading to prejudice. The comment I made earlier about, back in the old days, anybody with a bad back condition, you immediately were suspicious that they were trying to swing in the lead and just didn't want to come to work. That's moved into people with depression. It's so easy to go online and find out the symptoms that you can present yourself to have any condition you particularly want. But it's drilling down and making sure that we understand that, well, whilst there are people like that, probably the vast majority aren't, and they need some kind of help to get through the process. But if we do display stigma within the workplace and we have negative attitudes toward people, then that can lead to people hiding the difficulties from others. They become ashamed to discuss their issues with family, friends or colleagues. They don't want to have to discuss their personal lives with other people because of concerns about how that will be taken by people. Just this morning there was an article on BBC Breakfast News about men getting together, playing football in a big club where they can feel free and able to talk to each other in an atmosphere and an environment where they feel safe and able to discuss issues with each other. And that's become a big issue over the last few years about trying to get men particularly to open up and discuss any kind of mental health issues that they may be suffering, and to feel safe to do that and not to feel that they're going to be judged as a result of anything they disclose to colleagues. But if there is this social attitude and there are negative attitudes in the workplace, then people do become reluctant to seek support. You know, they don't want to talk to anybody else. They don't want to go and see their GP, because going to see their GP suggests that they're not well, and they don't want to be ill. They don't want to be off work. They don't want to suffer the loss of money, etc., etc. So, you know, it's a bit of a catch-22 situation for people. Stigmas like this can lead to exclusion of people from employment, housing, social events, etc. The person then may start to internalize the stigmas and begin to believe the negative things that are said about them. So if we constantly tell people that they are unwell, or they've got a mental health condition, or their behavior is not acceptable, you know, there may be perfectly sound reasons for their behavior, but if we keep telling them that their behavior is unacceptable, then they might start believing it. They might start believing that they are useless. They can't do their job. You know, it is a sensitive area that we all need to think about. Now, we started off talking about depression and how that what's the word I was looking for? How that manifests itself at work. What is depression? What is the issue that we need to think about? Now, this next section is a little video that I think is quite useful in helping us to understand what people who are going through depression might be feeling. So I'll just play this for you to have a look at. Yeah, so I think that is quite a powerful little video there. It talks about, you know, what the effects of depression are on an individual, and then towards the end talks about how you can start to look to change things for you, how you can take an approach to seek help and do that. So now, obviously, it may be helpful for any of you that have got suffering from any level of depression. But equally, it just shows, you know, some of the stuff that's out there to help to point people towards. You know, they don't have to deal with this on their own. They can get help. Now, you may have your own internal processes. You may have a well-being policy in the company. Certainly, Romero's have a very good well-being process where lots of help's available to employees. You know, you may have helplines where people can contact, but there's lots of things that we can do as organizations that are going to help us to help our employees who might be suffering from some kind of mental health condition. So generally, we all tend to suffer from a lack of understanding. You know, I find it difficult. I mean, I've been doing HR for 42 years now, and I still find it difficult to understand why employers find it difficult to understand, you know, that they have to give people holidays. They have to go through a disciplinary procedure if they want to dismiss somebody. You know, they have to pay SSB. You know, and I still get calls from employers today saying, "Do I have to give people a contract of employment?" And I find it difficult to understand that after 40 years doing this job, there are still employers out there that struggle with these basic concepts. But then again, I think, well, new businesses are coming along every day, new people that haven't done this before. So there will be people who don't understand what mental health conditions can do, how that can affect employees. But as HR people and people with responsibility for HR, it's important that we, sorry, Susan, just letting Susan back into the room. Yeah, so it's important that we try and understand that people will have issues, whether it's neurodivergent issues, mental health issues, whatever it is, depression, anxiety. We can help them to identify what the issues might be and to have an understanding of what they're going through and to try and help them pull themselves out of any mental health issues that they've got. We've got to get away from the view that, oh, just pull yourself together, man, that, get on with it, or grow a set, or people who've got mental health conditions or neurodivergent issues are weak somehow. Knowledge of how to deal with mental health concerns is not widespread. People don't know what help they may be available and how to access that help. And creating a better awareness of the subject and understanding that support is available can only be a step in the right direction. Now, one of the issues that you'll face, and we get calls on it on a regular basis, is that whilst you as HR people or senior managers responsibility for people understand what people might be going through, their work colleagues, probably rightly, may not have an understanding that somebody is suffering from some kind of mental health condition and is seeking help within the workplace. And people who are off sick, allegedly off, or according to their colleagues, oh, this person's supposed to be off sick. I saw them down at Tesco's doing the shopping. Why aren't they at work? I'm having to cover their job. That's been around since ever I started in the business. People don't like to think that people are getting away with not coming to work without fully understanding the reasons and the genuine reasons why people may not be at work. And again, as well as helping the individual that might be suffering from a condition, it's helping the rest of our employees understand that we're trying to help, and we will try and help anybody in the workplace who has an issue that we can deal with, and we would do the same for all of you. Would you like us to sack you because you've been off sick for a while without really understanding why or taking proper advice and guidance to get through that? And it's by having a workplace where we put measures in place that everybody knows it's a safe environment to work in, that if they have got issues, they can come forward, they can talk to people about it and get help somehow. May not be internal help, but help to point them in the right direction for getting external assistance, their GP, local charities, etc. So again, it's building up this total awareness within the organisation that yes, you may have a problem and we'll try and help you, but equally everybody that we are in a position where we want to make sure if there are issues that we're not just making a knee-jerk reaction to what's going on. Unfortunately, as we're all aware, access to professional treatment is a bit of a lottery today. However, if we identify that somebody has got a serious problem, they haven't taken any advice, it is important to try and point them in the direction, certainly initially, of getting help from their GP. Or if you've got an internal GP service, like some companies have, telephone advice to a doctor, ringing 111, was it 111, the National Health Service. There's lots of organisations out there that we can point people to help. But initially, if it looks like a serious issue, then we should be pointing people to get professional help to identify what their issues might be and how best we can we can deal with them. Person themselves may not be aware of how to ask for help or where to get support from. It may be that all that's required is to talk to them and suggest potential ways to get support. So if you have identified an issue with an employee and you have a welfare meeting with them to discuss what's going on, why that might be, and get a view that, well, yes, this person may well be suffering from anxiety or depression or some other mental health condition, or a neurodivergent condition, then it's having a knowledge of where we might be able to point them in the right direction of. If you've got mental health first aiders in your workplace, they will be an ideal person to start a conversation with somebody who's having problems. So people who can go to GP, counsellors, psychiatrists, social care specialists, mental health charities. Now, I've had issues in the past personally with family members where serious problems were occurring, and I went to Mind, and I found that an extremely useful tool to help me to understand what was going on and how best I could try and help my relative to deal with the issues that they were going through. So like I say, I mean, it touches everybody. Mental health issues can touch everybody, and it's as well to have some knowledge of how best we can try and, rather than just trying to ignore it and hoping it all go away. Or
I'm sorry to interrupt, Graham, but we can't see your screen at all. We can just see your mouse moving around.
All right, okay.
I don't know if that's our problem or yours.
Probably mine.
I can see it fine. It's probably a bandwidth thing, to be honest. It's fine this side.
Is it?
Right.
I don't know then.
Is anybody else having a problem?
Our side then, is it? It just us.
It's fine for me, Graham. We're all right. So it could be just an
Susan,
internet problem.
If you turn your camera off, it might save a bit of bandwidth for you, make it a bit easier.
Right, well, we didn't have the camera on a minute ago, so...
Oh, sorry, you popped up the list of people when it came on, so...
Right. Well... certainly, I'm not a techie, so I've got no idea what to suggest.
Turn off incoming video. Oh, it's flashed then. Oh, it's flashing. Oh, gosh.
This could be seen to be a stressor.
I don't know. Let's just take it into my office a minute. See if that makes a difference. If it stands right next to the router, I'm really sorry, everybody. And that should... And it's still not on.
Right, well, I think the only thing I can suggest is that you continue listening, as long as you can hear me.
And you'll send us the...
You'll be able to get access to the presentation afterwards, so that's not a problem particularly. So I'm sorry you can't see, because there's a couple of videos coming up which are quite good, but they're only pictures with lots of talking over them, so you'll get the gist of them anyway. So yeah, sorry about that. Let's continue. Yeah, so some mental health conditions can cloud things for an individual, and they may not be able to make good decisions. They might not actually realise that they do need help. In these situations, it's important that if issues arise at work, with an understanding of mental health, you might be able to identify that there may be a mental health concern and potentially provide guidance. This may be a difficult step to take, but it's all about having the confidence as managers and as HR people to say, right, we've identified a problem, let's go and tackle it. Let's go and speak to the individual. Let's get them in, talk to them, and find out why this might be happening. What are the issues going on? And try and dig into what we might be causing the problem. It might be internal work issues that are going on, that they don't feel that they're being treated properly in the workplace. They might feel that they're being overlooked or whatever. But we might actually find that they are actually suffering from some kind of medical mental health condition that needs more treatment or treatment that we can't provide, and it's helping them to identify, well, let's go down, let's try this route and see if that starts to help. Some people will turn you down, and they won't be willing to talk to you about it. They just want to blank it off completely. But as HR people, if we've identified an issue, ultimately, if we end up having to part company with an employee, we need to be able to show as an organisation that we knew there was a problem, we sought to help the individual with that problem, and despite what we did and the medical advice, etc., that we took, the employee wouldn't engage with us, and we ultimately, at the end of the day, we had no alternative but to part company. Because at the end of the day, I say, we're not doctors, we're not social workers, we're not psychiatrists. You're there, to get a job done. The business needs to keep functioning. And if we've got people who are unable to come to work for whatever reason, then we've got a right to challenge that and to deal with it. But we need to be aware that mental health might be an issue. And given the Equality Act and the potential discrimination, disability, many mental health conditions being a disability, then we do have to go through the Equality Act to make sure that we act appropriately and reasonably when we're dealing with individuals. One of the big issues is why we don't talk to people about problems is we're often worried about doing the wrong thing. What if we say something that tips them over the edge? Could I cause further damage to the individual because I'm not a doctor? I don't know what I'm doing in terms of managing their psychosis or whatever it is that they've got. But I think one of the things I learned on the mental health first aid course, unless you're going to go in with a hammer and start, berating people, which would be highly unlikely, if you're going in there with the view to help and to discuss and to talk through the issues and to try and guide them to get help, appropriate help, then it's highly unlikely that you're going to cause any further damage. What we're trying to do is encourage the individual to talk to us about what might be going on. They may not want to give you the full details, but they might give you a taste of what they're going through, to give us a way in to start that conversation and to help the individual move forward. One of the things I recall from the mental health first aid course was when there was one of the exercises was to do with somebody who was threatening to commit suicide, and very much came across that if somebody's talking about committing suicide, don't be afraid to ask them why. What is it that you why would you want to do this? How are you going to do it? What's your plan? It won't push them over the edge to doing it. So it's a difficult area to come to grasp with, but don't be afraid to talk to people and to ask questions. If you don't get answers, you don't get answers, and we can't force people to talk to us. But it's a case of how we approach people and what we try and talk to them about and why we're doing that, what we're trying to do to help them. One of the things generally with ill health, when we have people who are on long-term sick, is there is a requirement before we make a decision to terminate somebody's employment. It may be a medical condition rather than a mental health condition. Is that before we make that decision and we decide that, well, they're not going to come back to work anytime soon, we can't make any reasonable adjustments, and therefore we're going to terminate their employment, is that we have some medical evidence to back that up. So it's why we always ask you to go out and ask the employee to give permission to write to their doctor for a report on their medical condition, and explain to the doctor what the employee's job is, and what they're being off with, what they're saying they can't do, and any steps that you might have already taken, and say, can you give us any further guidance on, one, is this a disability? Are there any reasonable adjustments that we could make? And if it comes back and says, well, no, there's no way this person is ever going to come back to work because of their medical condition, there's no reasonable adjustments that can be made, then we've got medical evidence that backs us up in terms of dismissing. The problem we've got quite often is that we ask the employee for permission to write to the doctor and they say, no, you can't do that. And that is their legal right to refuse. But they seem to think that what you're going to do is write to the doctor and want their full medical history from when they were a child up until today. Well, no, what we're writing to the doctor about is the current medical condition that is causing them to be off work now. What we can do best to try and facilitate them coming back to work. So we're trying to narrow it down to the specific reason why they're off work. But getting people to talk to you and be willing to open up is a difficulty. And that is perhaps more pertinent if somebody's suffering from a mental health problem and they fear that this is going to cause people to think the wrong things about them, their job to be at risk, etc. So everyday management procedures to identify problems and needs. If any employees experience mental health at the workplace, ideally they should feel able to raise this with you as their manager. So have you got a kind of relationship with your reports that they feel that if they've got an issue, they can come and talk to you without you jumping down the throat and saying, just get on with your job, which I'm sure none of you would do. Regular work planning sessions, appraisals, or informal chats about progress are the kind of everyday management processes that provide neutral and non-stigmatizing opportunities to talk about any problems employees might be facing. So if you're an organization that encourages your managers to talk regularly to their teams, whether it be weekly informal team get-together, one-to-ones with colleagues, just to build that whole open management style, it is likely to be beneficial. If employees don't bring up an issue, but you've noticed a change in their behaviours that you think they might be becoming unwell, you need to find a way of broaching it. So have their figures dropped off? Can you approach them? Has their relationship with colleagues changed? Have you noticed a different temperament that they might be coming to work with? Have they got an attendance problem, or is their timekeeping being affected? So it's again having that understanding of the people who work for you, your team, so that you can identify that things might be changing that you want to talk to them about and try and get into early to try and resolve what those issues might be. Now, to encourage this, I find these two videos that I'm going to play you now quite powerful in respect of the need to open up conversations. They're award-winning shorts by a group called See Me in Scotland from back in 2016, so 10 years old now nearly. See Me is a charitable organisation funded in part by the Scottish government, but they are still relevant today and probably for all time. I spoke to See Me before I started doing these webinars, and they granted me permission to use these in this webinar. So there's no issues there. But I think they're quite useful. The individuals do have strong Scottish accents, so just listen carefully to try and decipher. There's no subtitles, but you should be fine. Okay, so here we go. I think they're quite good. There is some strong language in them, so just be prepared for that. But as I say, they're quite powerful. Okay, so as I say, that's from the point of view of the employee who's having issues and concerns. And then it is one of the big things. It's your mind and how your mind works, and you can be all the problems at work might be going around your head at night, and you can't sleep at night, you're thinking about stuff. But it's having the knowledge that somebody at work is going to be able to say to you, rather than treating you wrongly because you've got some issues going on, they're willing to sit down and talk to you and ask you if you're okay. And it's that initial "are you okay" that might open the door to say, well, let's have a, and if the person says, well, not really, or I've got issues, then that opens the door for you to say, well, let's go and have a chat, take them away and talk to them and find out what's going on. So from the other side of the coin, this one's from the Big Cheesy, the boss man. So let's see what he talks about. Yeah, so as I say, I think they're quite useful things to look at in terms of trying to open up conversations with colleagues. So what we're going to look out for in terms of the workplace: sudden dips in performance or punctuality might be signs of a deeper underlying problem. So it's unhelpful potentially to take a hardline approach. You clearly need to talk about issues at an early stage. I have spent decades trying to get employers to tackle issues head on. Don't let things fester. If you identify that there's an issue, then let's try and deal with it. Get it opened up and dealt with as soon as you can. The longer we leave things, and that goes from as an employee as well, the longer you leave things before you try and get help or resolve the issues, the worse the problem is likely to become. Ask questions in an open, exploratory, and non-judgmental way. For example, I've noticed that you've been arriving late recently and wondered why you are. That gives the employee the opportunity to express their concerns in their own way. What can depression in the workplace cause? Decreased productivity, low morale, not just with the individual who might be suffering from depression, but with colleagues at work. Lack of cooperation might affect safety in the workplace if they're so distracted that they fail to follow safety rules properly. Absenteeism or presenteeism, as I mentioned at the beginning. Complaints of tiredness, complaints about aches and pains, alcohol or drug use. And we've mentioned all of these potential things that might identify that an individual has issues in the workplace, and things that you as managers, as your supervisors and foremen, whoever, can look out for to say, right, well, this is what the issues are with my colleague. How best are we going to deal with this? Presenteeism, sickness with presence, is act of showing up for work without being productive, generally because ill health prevents it. Mostly negative effects, including productivity loss, poor decision making, and lower team morale. Symptoms: fatigue, low energy levels, difficulty concentrating, lack of motivation, and avoiding engaging with co-workers. So this person might be turning up for work. They haven't got an absenteeism issue, but whilst they're there, they might be displaying any of these signs, and their performance and general attitude at work is lower than you would want or have had in the past from that individual. So that, again, it's signs of potential issues that we might want to explore with the individual as to what's going on. So employees prioritize work over their own well-being, reporting for work when they're sick, ill, or injured. A variety of factors may compel employees to work through illness or pain, including understaffing, job insecurity, and poor work-life balance. Another thought, job insecurity. Are they so insecure about the job they feel if they don't come to work, then somebody's going to replace them? So they've got to be seen to be at work, even if they can't do the job because of what's going on internally. So again, to address presenteeism, employers can create a supportive workplace culture, encourage work-life balance, promote employee health and well-being, provide flexible working arrangements, and address job demands and workload. Reducing presenteeism is essential for both employers and employees alike, because the longer we allow an employee to behave in this manner and not to perform in the job whilst actually they are turning up every day, is likely to end up in a much more serious problem that you need to deal with. I mean, another issue is, people coming to work before their normal start time, staying longer in the evening because they think that is the way to go on, and that will help to protect their jobs. So it's all down to a level of job insecurity that people may be suffering. So if you're going to have a conversation with employees, ask for a private meeting, a mutually convenient time, and give yourself plenty of time. Meet outside the office. Maybe go to if you've got a coffee shop internally or a canteen, somewhere where it's private and less intimidating for the individual to talk. Take them out to the local Costa, whatever. But find a way to have a meeting where the individual feels that they can open up and talk. Back up the concerns over particular behaviours or performance with concrete examples, dates, and times. So don't just go in with vague thoughts about what's been going on. Before, plan your meeting out so that you go in armed with the knowledge and evidence that you can show, well, you may not think this is happening, but yes, this is what I've seen. These are the examples of it. You don't want to be disturbed, so turn off the phone or put it onto silent. There's nothing worse than if you're going to have a close, personal, private conversation with an individual, if you're going to be interrupted by the telephone going off or your mobile going off or whatever. When you ask them how they are, don't take "I'm fine" for an answer. Be prepared for them to be evasive or defensive. Use examples to underpin your concern and move the conversation forward. So they may still, despite your efforts to try and get them to open up to you, they may still not be willing to do so. But again, record the fact that you've had the conversation, record the fact that you've tried, what you've discussed, and the fact that the employee won't talk any further at this point, and let it go. But then continue to observe, and if issues become any worse or they'll continue, then you may want to start that process again. Mind your language. Don't say I. Say I, not we, to avoid the employee getting the impression that everybody is talking about them. So if you're going to have this meeting, say we've noticed that. Well, who's we? Who are you talking to this about? So it's your observation of what's happening. You're having a one-to-one conversation with that individual so that you can try and get them to provide you with answers. Reassure them that you're there to help them, not to censure. This is not a disciplinary meeting and they are not in trouble. It may well develop into more formal processes, but at this stage we're trying to identify what the issues might be and what we can do to help. If they get upset, let them take their time. Resist the temptation to offer water or tissues, or they may perceive that as an attempt to stop them crying or whatever. They will tell you when they're ready to continue. So, if somebody does have a mini breakdown or starts to cry, then sit back and just let them get that out. And then once they're ready, they'll stop and then potentially so you can ask them if they're happy to continue talking. Listen to them in a non-judgmental way. A lot of things that you will hear may not meet your social norms or what you think is the correct way to act or whatever. But what we're trying to do is identify what the issues are for the individual. We're not there to judge them or to say, well, why do you think that? That's silly. You're not silly. They're not silly. You just want to try and identify what the problems are and what might be possible to help them with. Don't be tempted to rush into action. Tell the employee you need to reflect on what you've heard. Thank them for talking to you. Reassure them that you will sort it out between you and fix another time to talk. Switching the pronoun to we at this stage is because it includes them. So, okay, thank you for talking to me. Been most helpful. We need to have another meeting, in a while when I've taken all of this in to discuss the matter further. and then you can hopefully get another meeting arranged and move it forward. Try and use non-judgmental listening. That's using your skills to hear and understand exactly what's being said. Allow the person to speak freely and comfortably without feeling judged. Requires 3 key attributes: acceptance, respect the person's feelings, experience and values, although they may be different from yours, not judging or criticizing. Being genuine, showing that you accept the person and their values by what you say and do. Don't make any kind of moral judgment on the situation that you're listening to. And try and be empathetic. The ability to place yourself in the other person's shoes and demonstrate to them that you hear and understand what they are saying and feeling. You get on their wavelength. This is all great to say in an hour and a half webinar, but again, it's hopefully beneficial in terms of, well, how am I going to approach this? Verbal skills, listening without interrupting, paying attention, ask appropriate questions to make sure you're both clear about what's being said. Listen to the words and tone of voice, observe the body language, check you understand what the person is saying by restating it. So if they make a statement to you, just to make sure they know that you've understood what they're saying, repeat it back to them. So you're telling me this, and they hopefully will say, yes, that's right. Summarize facts and feelings. Use minimal prompts to keep the conversation going. Don't worry about pauses or silences, as the person may not, may be simply thinking or temporarily lost for words. So allow for, awkward pauses, just maybe that the person is just trying to get their thoughts together. Avoid the temptation to fill the silences, or you may break their train of thought or the rapport between you. Don't try and fill their sentences or finish their sentences for them, because then you tend to be seen to be making assumptions about what they were going to say, and it may not be strictly true. Be attentive, keep appropriate eye contact, maintain an open body position. Don't sit there cross-armed and legged as if you're closing them off. Sit down, even if the other person is standing. This will make you seem less threatening. So if the person wants to get up and wander about when they're talking to you, then don't be intimidated by that. That may be just the best way that they feel they can get out what they want to say to you. Try not to sit directly opposite the other person, which can seem confrontational. So rather than sitting on both sides of a desk, which is much more formal and then potentially confrontational, make it a more relaxed setting that you're sitting having this one-to-one conversation with them. Reassure, if the employee is reluctant to talk about their mental health, reassure them that you'll treat anything they tell you in confidence, except where there are issues that pose both a health and safety risk or a risk to themselves or to other people. Clearly, if somebody's talking about attacking people or wanting to kill people in the workplace, then we've got to deal with that. We can't just let that go. However, that's extreme circumstances, I find. But if they are reluctant, consider why they might be reluctant. Are they worried about being judged? That they might lose their job? Do they have confidence that they can open up to you? Will you treat any disclosures they make to you sympathetically and positively? Now, it doesn't matter what you might be thinking internally. You might find it abhorrent what's happened, but what we're trying to do is to get them to open up and understand why they're doing or what they're doing, why they're feeling like they're feeling, and then we can take steps towards trying to address any issues. If the employee finds it too difficult to talk now, again, don't try and force it. Don't try and make them talk to you. Say, well, look, the door's always open, the offer's always open. If you want to come and talk to me, then let me know, and we'll sort something out. I'm more than happy to sit down and have a conversation at a later date when you feel more ready to do so. Yeah. So again, it's having that confidence in yourself that you do feel you can talk about. I mean, I know a lot of people get pressure, or employers get pressure to deal with this issue now. This person's been off, this person's performance is crap. I want them sorted, I want them out the door, you know, and trying to get perhaps senior management to slow down a bit and follow the processes might be on occasion a little bit more difficult. And I understand that, and you know, but you can always give Sentient a call and talk to us, and we'll try and help you deal with that situation too. Employees who become tearful and upset, and I can assure you that I've had many an occasion. Emotions are a natural part of life, and sooner or later, it's likely that a member of your staff will become upset. This can happen for any number of reasons and be connected to something at work or outside of work. What do? Stay calm. Reassure them that it's okay to be upset, that you're listening. In fact, the process of listening may be to provide an important space for both you and the employee to gain insight into the problem and possible actions how to resolve it. Ask them if they would like them to, if this goes on for any prolonged period of time, then ask them if they want you to contact anybody on their behalf. Do they want somebody to come and be with them? It may be that somebody is so upset that you need, and they give you permission to contact a family member who can come in and try and help to compose them. Or just allow them to go to a safe place on their own and compose themselves quietly by themselves until they're ready to come back and talk to you, if they are. You might suggest that you both leave the building for a short time, have a hot drink or short walk, give them time to collect themselves. They may choose to go on their own, but it's advisable to accompany them or have somebody else of their choosing accompany them if they're still distressed. So, you know, if they are very distressed, don't particularly leave them on their own to wander the streets around your factory. Get them to have a friend or a colleague to go with them. Respect their wishes. Once they've recovered sufficiently, they may want to carry on working. Alternatively, they may want to take a break or even go home. So again, it's assessing the situation. How distressed have they been? Are they going to be able to compose themselves and go back to work? Or do they need some time out, perhaps take the rest of the day and come back to work tomorrow? Don't ignore someone who is upset, even if you're worried about how they will react to your intervention. Don't do anything that may make the situation worse. I mean, a lot of this sounds like common sense, but it's surprising sometimes when common sense doesn't prevail. Employees may be affected directly or indirectly. If partners, dependents, or other family members have poor mental health, which in turn impact on their mental health, people can also be affected by friends, fellow employees' experiences. Poor mental health can affect the way people think, feel, or behave. In some cases, this can seriously limit their ability to cope. However, many people effectively manage their mental health alongside the demands of job and daily life, sometimes with treatment and support. Others may experience symptoms of poor mental health, but may never be diagnosed with a condition and maybe just quietly get on doing the job and managing their position independently. As we've mentioned, mental health is a disability issue. Mental health issues are considered a disability when there's a significant impact on a person that lasts for longer than 12 months. Other disabilities may contribute towards individual developing mental health issues. An illness that restricts somebody from having social contact outside of the home puts people at heightened risk of mental health, such as depression. So if somebody's laid up, incapacitated at home, they can't get out and do things, they can't go to the shops, they can't go and visit people, they're stuck all day watching Home Under the Hammer and Escape to the Country, etc., then that might drive them over the edge to some kind of mental health condition. So again, we need to be aware that whilst they're off sick with a physical condition, their mental health may be being affected by what they can and can't do because of that physical condition. In a direct quote from the mental health first aid people, they urge that senior leaders have a responsibility to create an open organisational culture that helps all employees recognise well-being and mental health as a critical issue, and which empowers workers to engage with the topic as a vital priority. So again, you know, that level of senior leader leadership in this area may be lacking in some areas in some of your organisations, but it's an issue that as HR people, as managers, we need to try and foster a better understanding of why people suffer from mental health and what better things we could be doing to prevent this happening, particularly with issues in the workplace, and how we can help people to get through a mental health dip that allows them to keep on working and pursue their careers. Because ultimately, we don't want to have to be getting rid of people, replacing them, losing the experience they may have had, having to retrain people, etc., etc. As most of you will know, these are our services. I'll let you read those at your own leisure when you ask for a copy of the slides. This is also about Romero and our well-being service. We are well-being. So any questions anybody has? As I say, feel free to contact me, post this. I'm more than happy to answer questions. Contact Sally if you want copies of the slides. And just a final slide, ACAS, which I'm sure you'll all be aware of, provide a framework for positive mental health at work, which the headlines on that are employees need to be committed to actively promoting positive mental health at work, need to understand about mental health, be open to conversations with their team members, and individuals need to look after their own mental health and ask for help when needed. So go onto the ACAS website, have a look at their framework. That's a useful tool as well. As I say, there's hundreds and hundreds of useful advice and guidance tools from mental health charities, particularly, that help employers to manage staff who have a problem. So thank you, Gareth. I hope that was of benefit to some of you or all of you. As I say, an hour and a half isn't nearly long enough to concentrate on some of the issues that we've got, but I hope it was of interest to you this morning. Thank you very much.